Now, something that you may not agree with me immediately on, but I'd like you to consider is the following proposition. Catholics and Christians more generally have been right about everything. Christmas and Christianity are worth fighting for. Why? Because Catholics, in particular, and Christians generally, I mean, you're sort of like a slow relative, you know, like sort of. You know, you meet up with the family once a year, and little cousin Richard is in the corner. You know, it's how we like to think of Protestants. Even though there are now quite a lot of you, the disease is spreading. What's that? Well, no, look, but we still love you. We love you, you're just a bit retarded. Anyway, you can read into most of what I'm going to say Christianity more generally, but I, of course, will be speaking about the purest and most excellent, best form of Christianity, which is Catholicism. There we go, good, perfect. We have some papists in the audience, good. What's that? Oh, of course. No, of course. Good Lord. Can you imagine going to a mass? Can you imagine going to a mass in English? Oh, and there's about 4 people know what I'm talking about, so let's move on. Christmas and Christianity are worth fighting for. They are. There's so many things we owe to religion as a debt of gratitude that the sort of smug Reddit atheists don't even know about, and don't like to admit, and sort of like rage quit when you bring up. Now, I can't listen to many of these debts of gratitude. I want to sort of turn this into a bit of a pep rally for Jesus, just briefly, just for 5 minutes, all right, to think about some of the things that Christianity has brought to Western civilization. Consensual marriage. Too much? No, not too much. Never. In the 12th century, so you won't expect me to start a sentence like that, will you, with this on the screen? In the 12th century, marriage came to be counted as a sacrament by the Catholic Church. And as a sacrament, it doesn't require a priest, only the agreement of the man and of the woman, which is the greatest protection ever given to women in the history of anything. By the Church's argument, women cannot be married against their will. They and the groom must say, I do. Think about that, ladies. Without the Catholic Church getting smart hundreds of years ago, you would have been married off to the highest bidder by your family today, which is one of my personal fantasies. But other people have different views, and most people would agree that mutually consensual marriages are a pretty good idea, so thank you to Jesus for that one. In the Islamic world, of course, girls are married off as little girls in some cases, following the example of the Prophet himself, and they share a husband with other women in others. And once you are married, heaven forbid you bring shame on your husband, like for instance by getting raped, because you might get caned, stoned, or suffer an honor killing. Even if we strongly dislike women's studies departments, we should be thankful they don't involve classes on proper burqa maintenance, because as bad as third-wave Western feminism is, there are worse things out there, and that is thanks to the Catholic Church. This one is ironic. The education system is one of the... What? Oh, he's got it too. Must be one of those fancy calculators that does words. The education system is one of the most anti-Christian parts of America. You're existing in that system now. But it began life as a Christian endeavor. The first law in America to require general education was called the Old Deluder Satan Act, to teach children to read the Bible in 1647. 122 of the first 123 colleges in America were Christian universities. Think about Harvard. Harvard is sort of the epicenter. Yale is probably takes the crown for the craziest campus in America. But Harvard is not too far behind. This is the founding statement of Harvard: that every student be plainly instructed and earnestly pressed to consider well the main end of his life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ, which is eternal life. That statement would have today's Harvard students shaking, crying, and demanding safe spaces. Many of these universities have become sort of Christian in name only. DePaul, for instance, which now has one of the worst reputations for free speech. You're welcome. Anywhere in America, and they fucking deserve it. They deserve it. I don't know if you know the details of what happened to me at DePaul, but basically, I was in a very nice outfit. It's important to include the pertinent details. I was in a very nice outfit. I was doing sort of a Q&A thing, and these guys charged the stage. One of them took a swing for me, braver than that prick. The girl who was sort of like listless and drugged up was kind of like, dancing and mumbling incoherently and all the rest of it. And Chicago PD were just sort of standing at the side doing nothing. And we found out later that university administrators had instructed them not to intervene. When a male Black Lives Matter protester charged the stage, physically threatened me, his little girlfriend thing, took a swing for me, snatching microphones, refusing to allow the event to proceed. There was a line of afros from girls whose boyfriends I'd fucked. And I said, I take some responsibility because when they were all lined up, I said, what are you complaining about exactly? And they were saying, the usual Black Lives Matter grievances. I said, well, don't you realise, sitting here, you're going to make the black incarceration rates go up even higher. You're all about to get carted off. Anyway, I couldn't help myself. But DePaul instructed the police officers not to intervene, and then when I wanted to go back and speak again, they said no, because it was unsafe. Yeah, for me! Anyway, DePaul, in theory, a private Catholic university whose presidents have been hauled into the Vatican multiple times to explain why it is that DePaul, a private Catholic university, has some of the most enthusiastic abortion advocates anywhere in the country. Anyway, America owes higher education and education in general to the Christian tradition, like it owes capitalism. Capitalism would have been impossible without the Protestant work ethic, and this is the one thing that our slow relatives, the Protestants, have given us. Catholics, you see, as you can tell from their most fabulous proponents, are lazy, self-indulgent, and obsessed with getting drunk and pleasing themselves. Just kidding, because we just get to say sorry and it's all right. The sort of puritanical Protestant work ethic is the main reason capitalism flourished. Capitalism was not possible without Christianity. America would never have been possible without the Protestant work ethic, informing and enlarging the achievements of capitalism. And here's a controversial one: science. Now, it's easy to look at a picture of Galileo and laugh when I suggest to you that the Catholic Church has been a good thing for science. And indeed, there have been some hiccups. But Western science developed in the way it did in the first place precisely because Catholics believed that God created everything. Which means it's all worth contemplating as the work of the Creator. That's what the Catholic Church believed, and the early scientists believed. That because the world had been created by God, it was worth inquiry, it was worth discovery, it was worth us finding out more about it. They weren't looking for the watchmaker, as some 17th and 18th century philosophers put it, but for the structure of the whole as a revelation of their maker. They wanted to find God in everything. And that's how science started. Now, without Catholicism, science would look completely different. And if you want to point out, as some people occasionally tiresomely do, that science came out of Islam, or that Islam kept maths alive and all the rest of it, that's only true in conquered territories. It was Christians and Jews and locals from other places under the Ottoman Empire and under various other bits of conquest from our Middle Eastern friends that kept things like that alive. It's a myth that we had some sort of dark ages in Europe while the Islamic Empire was flourishing and keeping it all alive. It isn't really true. It's just who happened to be in power at the time. The people in those countries are the same. So, a little like Western Europe today, France and the UK, it's the same people, but it's, Muslims holding the levers of power. Now, no lecture on Christmas would be complete without at least one Bible quote, and here is Galatians. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Well, the Bible here is arguing against identity politics. No, it is. I mean, they didn't know about it then. But what they're effectively arguing for is a world not that dissimilar from the one envisaged by Martin Luther King. Identity doesn't matter because we are all equal human beings. Now, in their case, it's equal human beings under God. but it might similarly be equal human beings freed from the shackles of identity politics that insist on dividing us all by race, gender, sexuality. The most vibrant places on earth for the Catholic Church are in South America, Africa, and China, which is not really what you'd expect from a religion painted by the left as evil and white. It isn't. Why? Because of that. Now, separation of church and state. You know, sometimes we're just running late. This last one's especially ironic. Who'd imagine the Catholic Church practiced what so many on the left use to fight Christianity today? The ACLU gets the star taken down off the Christmas tree. How? By invoking separation of church and state. And the local town has to crumble because ultimately they would lose. But the Catholic Church practiced precisely this. The Catholic Church has always been held separate from the countries and the kings that ruled over Catholics themselves. Emperors and kings had to answer to the Pope in some cases, but the Pope didn't always win. And Philip IV's humiliation of Pope Boniface VIII is a perfect example of this, an episode of history with which I know you will all be intimately familiar. The important thing is that the Church was separate from the country, and that's been the case in almost all Christian countries for most of history. Protestants changed that, I have to tell you, leaving the religion of a land up to its rulers. And this is what happened when you got rid of the Pope. This is Henry VIII. Kings wanted to start being the head of the religion. We're smarter than that. We realized that this was a good thing. So the mingling of government and religion, which is a predictable nightmare, works about as well as Obamacare, is something that only happened after you wandered off the one true path. Now, Catholics also write about birth control and abortion, which we'll save for another day. And capitalism, as I said, would have been impossible without Christianity. But I'll leave you to Google those things to annoy your thin-skinned atheist friends.